All right, welcome to another episode of Beer and Business Applications. This time, 4 people in the room, in the bar, whatever. We're in Australia for Dynamics 365 Summit Australia. First event, pretty awesome so far. Ton of people here.
600 people.
600 people. It's pretty awesome. I wanted to welcome Leon Tribe to the episode. Rami. What's your name again? George Dubinsky and me. So anyway, I wanted to invite you guys.
What's your name again?
Don't worry about it. All right. Okay, so here's the thing. I wanted to invite you guys because I really want us to like get naked. I guess that's the best.
What?
That's okay. Well, let me explain. Hold on. Let me explain. Let me explain.
I'm not comfortable with getting naked in public. We're in a bar.
I'm very comfortable.
If we did that in the hotel room. Oh man.
So anyway, not recently, like a couple months ago, I read this book. Britta Rexstad actually recommended this book called Getting Naked, and it's even though it's called Getting Naked, I thought once Britta recommended it, I'm like, yeah, I'm on board with that. But then I started reading and I realized it was about consulting, and it was pretty good. Right? I was just interested in
what kind of consulting?
It was it was written by this guy called Patrick Lencioni. Really great read, talking about essentially the 3 fears that prevent us from building trust and loyalty with our clients. That's what they call the book. Naked Consulting is about. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to invite you guys because you work with customers, and I want to talk about the principles and these 3 fears essentially, and kind of the tricks that we can use to get over those fears. And essentially pick your brain and see if you agree or disagree with them, or maybe look for examples that you've seen these in projects before or working with customers before. So that's pretty much what this is about. But before we do that, cheers guys. This is Beer and Business Applications. So
Salud.
Cheers to everyone. Cheers to hopefully they grab a drink as well and they're joining us. All right. Let's get started. So the first fear that Patrick Lencioni is talking about, it's called the fear of losing the business, right? And what I want to do is I want us to talk about this, and what we'll do is we'll release this as a series. So each video will be a fear, but again, this one will be about fear of losing the business. And here are the notes that I took. So on this one, it says, what clients want more than anything is to know that we're more interested in helping them than we're in maintaining our revenue source. So clients really don't want to perceive that all you want is to just make more money from them, that you're really interested in helping them, right? That's what this is about. And he thinks that companies that operate constantly concerned that they're going to lose that revenue source and that income essentially, they are not really putting the best interest of the client up front, right, first. So what do you guys think about that?
That's quite common. So I've worked with very large organizations myself, multinationals, and yeah, that's meeting your targets and making sure that you generate revenue is on top of their mind, and they'll do anything to please the customer, even if that means that the customer is not always 100% correct, and we know better as consultants on how to help them get to the final result that they're after, just in fear of losing business and giving it to someone else. That's quite common.
But has it happened in the past to you guys, maybe not with the company that you're currently working for, but maybe you've been doing this thing for years, where you saw either someone else do this, or maybe you did it yourself, where you recommended something that not necessarily, maybe you didn't recommend it, maybe the customer asked for it and you were like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea, but we'll do it anyway. Do you have any examples where you've seen this in the past?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, it happens a lot. So I guess there's a couple of things. Firstly, I consciously try not to mention my other current clients when I'm with a client. I want to give the client the illusion that they are my only client, even though reality isn't. And the client knows that's not the case.
Right.
I don't want to be saying, oh, I need to go to my other client. I don't want them ever to think that they are my second client.
Right.
I want, when I'm spending time with them, time should be about them, 100%. In terms of, it's an interesting thing with the consulting in that the client will hire you. Doesn't hire you to do a job. They hire you to be a mentor, to help recommend things, to give you the best advice you possibly can. But they won't always take that advice. And so one of the things as a consultant you've got to reconcile is the fact that from your perspective, the client is crazy for going down a certain path. Either you say, look, if you don't whatever it is, don't use leads, or whatever it is, right? So you don't use leads, use contacts, or whatever
Right.
it is. You, in your mind, you don't. And the thing that I guess I've reconciled is the fact that while I know Dynamics very, very well, I don't know their business as well as they do. So while, in my perspective, there might be excellent reasons not to go down that specific technology path, I simply don't know their business as well as they do. So my job is to give them as much information as possible, to give them the best advice as possible, and then they choose to use it however they wish. I can't.
Even if that advice that you're giving them, that guidance you're giving them, could put you guys in jeopardy, would you still provide the same?
Well, in what way do you mean put it in jeopardy?
So let's say the customer thinks that, let's say for phase 2 or phase 3, they really want to focus on, implementing a portal, for example. Sure. And let's say you disagree. You don't think that a portal is the right way of doing it. You think that maybe Forms Pro is the right, or whatever, like something else. You don't think that should be, or what happens to me sometimes is that customers think when they prioritize, they say portals should be next, or no, portals will be last. Like, phase number 15 is portals, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, dude, you guys need a portal now. Like, we need to do this now. So would you still bring that up even though you're combative, essentially? You might be pulling yourself away from that stream by saying that, I know what you guys want to do, which is like money in my pocket right now, is not what we should do. We should do something else.
If I've given them the best advice I can, I've explained what I perceive as the consequences. In my mind, that's the best I can do. If I go competitive and say you're wrong, you're doing this crazy, I'm not going to support you if you do this, I destroy the relationship. So that means I can't give them advice in the future. If it does go wrong, again, maybe they know their business better than me, maybe they know of other projects within IT which are going to contribute that, and that's why they're going down a certain path. If I become so belligerent in my advice that they go, I'm not going to talk to the guy, he's just an ass whenever he talks to me.
Right.
Then that's game over for me, regardless of whether it's successful or
You don't want to be a smart ass, that's for sure.
No, yeah, I'm normally a little cheeky in my patter, but I try to
In your face.
I try to draw that line between making them smile and making them think I'm a dick.
Yeah.
And it's finding that balance, I guess.
But I can relate to what you were saying, Gus. So, in terms of phasing things, typically I'm a big fan of DevOps, and in medium to large projects, I like to have some sort of automation behind the scenes that I know down the track is going to save us a lot of time and money. Now, the customer doesn't always see business value in implementing DevOps up front. They want to see something tangible. And it could be that you're the first few months that you're sort of working towards delivering something. You're also working on the foundation that is going to help you on the long run.
Yeah.
So my advice to the customers is, hey, I understand you guys need quick business value, sort of rapid delivery, but there's also importance in making sure that we're not sort of using a blunt tool to try and deliver something really slowly, but how about we spend some time sharpening that tool and making sure we've got a good process, so that we can become more efficient later. But there's also a little bit of a balance between the two. So you don't want to spend like $1 million just building a DevOps pipeline that will not deliver anything.
Right.
But you need to do some work in the background sort of to get them there. So there's a little bit of negotiation, if you want, in order to get a middle ground that will keep them happy. And I know, like I'm right now, I don't want to name the customer. I'm working on a pre-sales bid where we're taking over another organization that spent $600,000 on a project and didn't deliver anything, and they didn't see that they were not quick to deliver. So they're coming to another vendor to take over. So it's very, very a tricky balance between the two.
I think that there's two sides to it too. I think that there's a side where you're recommending them to do something because it benefits your business, not necessarily because the customer needs it. Like I've seen it a lot with people recommending extra work for like no reason really. But then there's the other side of not doing something. I wrote something about that. It says, when we do something or fail to do something, so both sides, in order to protect our business, they eventually lose respect for us and question whether they should trust us at all. Right? If they pick you up, either not mentioning something that could have helped them, or mentioning something that is not really useful for them just because it's good for your business, they eventually lose trust. Right?
That should never be part of the equation. I'm quite happy to compromise profit or revenue if it means a better outcome for the client. I'm on record now saying that.
These guys
100%.
have a luxury.
I don't know. I'm a director, man. I'm the national director now. I get my ass kicked every time my margin goes down 1%.
Just
it doesn't matter.
These guys have a luxury of having a time frame working on their side to fix any failure. In the larger businesses, it works like, okay, you lose this customer, you lose this project, it goes against you, but you still have time until financial year end or your next review to recover from that as an employee. When you're working in a small business or you're working for yourself as a contractor, doing smaller projects, there is this constant fear. Your failure is actually starting to affect potential affects your lifestyle, your family, your basically your day-to-day living, and you have this, constant fear as a smaller consultant that if you lose this client, well, that's the end of it. Well, what are you gonna do? It's like the question is really, what am I gonna do? Right? I put lots of eggs in this basket, perhaps not all of them, but large enough, that I won't even have enough eggs to make an omelette.
But if you're giving good advice, which isn't compromised by thinking, well, if I recommend portals over something else, then I can make good revenue. If your idea of adding value is to recommend stuff that's going to make you a buck, then you're not going to have that customer for long, right? And you wouldn't do that. Right?
No,
none of us would do that.
As a consultant,
give good advice, you're going to keep the customers, and then that's the same for all of us.
I'm just going to peddle my definition that I came up with. As a smaller company, you typically would work with smaller customers, and right. If you're a contractor and you're just contracting for 6 months, well, good on you. Then who cares? You're just an employee. The same way, you've got the luxury of this time frame. When working with smaller customers, how you define small to medium enterprise, right? I came up with definition, and it looks like it's working. So the small business is when you're talking to the guy, and this guy, they are going to pay out of their pocket as a small business for your expenses. So you're talking to the money. Right? So they're gonna question every single move you make.
Right.
Medium, it's when the person sitting in front of you reports to someone who actually paying them money for your services. Right. An enterprise is when the person sitting in front of you really doesn't care where the money comes from.
All right.
Right. So, so on a smaller scale for independent kind of contractors and smaller operators, what is important is to recognize that you are talking to a person who actually paying you their own money and earn their trust. So that's the most important thing that is required. It's not the feature set, not your approach, not even do you do ALM or not. That's least of all problems. It's earning the trust, even if your decisions initially may go against common sense. Maybe if your revenue drops suddenly on this project from 100,000 to 30,000, well, bite the bullet, because there will be a next phase and the next phase 100%. And the next phase.
Right.
So
and sometimes it will cost you revenue. Like but you should do the right thing. So there's a couple things that the book talks about in terms of getting rid of that fear. Fear number one, which is the fear of losing the business. And number one is they say you should always consult instead of selling.
Yes.
Right? So, and they say avoid telling clients what you would do if you were hired. Instead, start serving them as if they were already a client. So start helping them from the get-go, and not like, well, if you hire me, I'm gonna take care of that for you. If you hire me, so instead of like being always selling, is start consulting, start helping them right away. They say that that's always a better approach rather than just
don't over-consult. I was in a situation just recently.
Could be.
When client said, "That's a great idea. Thank you very much for your service." She'll go with it.
And you show them the door. But that's always the risk. If they take advantage of you, then
the
so be
other
it.
door opened and they invited us back and said, "Look, you gave us you just saved us 40,000 pounds. Come in and do this for us."
No, and it happened to me. I've told this story before where I talked to a customer in Florida, and I talked about it on the podcast, and they had, they were clearly a candidate for Dynamics 365 Online, like customer engagement online, based on the kind of company they were, and they were adamant about the fact that they didn't want to pay forever, as they call it, for it. They don't understand the software as a service thing. They says, "Oh, can we go on premise?" I'm like, "You can go on premise, but you're still gonna have to pay, because on premise is a yearly license. You're still paying ongoing, right?" And they were like, "No, I just want to pay a one-time thing and then just own it forever." And I'm like, "Well, that's not an option, right? It's like, well, no, I can hire some people from India to just create a custom solution for the company, and then I'll own it forever. Even if it's more money up front, I don't have to pay over time. And I'm like, yeah, and then once your company evolves, you know, who's gonna change that, right? You guys are the perfect candidate for CRM Online. That's what I would do. That's what I recommend. And if you guys don't want to do it, I understand. And I lost that chance of doing that project, which would have been a big project for us. But still, I feel that having the fear of losing the business is what causes you to, you know, lose respect with the
So
customer.
instead of admitting that you don't know CRM on premises,
But I
you
do know
pivoted
CRM
it and said it's in your best interest to go online.
Stop it.
The upgrade path is another great example of this, right? So you got a system who's got an on-prem system, and they're saying we want to upgrade it to go online.
Yeah.
Right, and the best advice in many situations, best situations is no. Let's just start with a blank online system, work out what you've got, use the configuration where we can, and yeah, we might need a bit of code for the extra bits. But often the clients are belligerent that they want to absolutely just upgrade their current system. They want to take all those plugins, they want to take all those web resources and stick them online.
Yeah.
And as a consultant, it would be very easy for me to go, sure, we'll spend the next 2 years migrating your call outs from your version 3 system onto online system. But it's wrong advice, right? It's a great way to get revenue.
That's a great example.
Nuke it from orbit.
Don't you
start
have a
again,
stack
is
of
better
"I
advice.
told you so" cards that
Throw
you
them out.
send to the
It's a great
customer?
example of where
Yeah, man. Let
you've
me
got
hand you a
the
card.
revenue or the right advice. You have to give the right advice.
You're 100% correct. So customers are usually afraid of change.
Yeah.
So whatever they've got, they want to keep on doing. So, so back in the days, now I can say that I've got some gray hair. They used to have like access forms, and they're like, can you replicate that in Dynamics? They used to have paper forms.
Yeah.
And they're like, can you replicate that in Dynamics? And you're like, well, all I'm doing is recreating paper form on digital. Let's use digital transformation instead. There's so many different ways of doing it. Everybody wants email. Why are you using
Let's
email?
keep paper forms and use AI to read them.
Yeah, well, we've got customers that actually go digital, and they're like, well, yeah, and at some stage you print it and then you turn it to paper form again. Seriously. So they are afraid of change. And, you know, we know the business. We've done that for a while, so we know how to advise them against that, not to sort of make the same mistakes again. And as you said, that will build trust. Once you show them the better way of doing things, they'll be like, that guy knows what he's talking about. Then many times have I, you know, changed from one vendor to the other and, you know, moved on and so on. And the customers come back to me, they're like, oh, you know, we did this with you and we actually looked for you, where are you working now? And we've got that new project because we knew the previous one was successful. So even though
It
you might
always comes
offend them-
around.
Exactly.
Yeah, it always comes
you
around.
might offend them by saying what you're doing is wrong, but let's look at a better way of doing it. You know, and then later on they will realize the benefit. You know, customers are not stupid and are quite educated nowadays into how to improve things. in
Oh,
general.
some of them are.
Hey.
Another example where I'm going to
Not you
be
guys.
careful because I don't want to be sued by my former employers.
Yeah.
There's been times when I've received an opportunity through my blog or through whatever it is. Someone say, "Oh, we need some help with our system," and traditionally it's been when I'm working for a very large organisation, and I know that although we could help them, the paperwork and the overhead of getting us to the point where we can actually start working with them just wasn't worth it. So I said, "Look, I'd love to help you. Go to this fellow over here." Right, he's a one-man band. So George, I mean, I don't know if I've done this to you or not, George, but
You've never done this for me, by the
never
way.
done it for
No,
George.
he's
okay.
never done.
He's
it for
never
me.
done this.
I don't know this
People-
one person.
Maybe it's people I
Never.
like.
Now I
maybe
know,
something
though.
like that.
Thank you.
But yeah, so I'll say go work with this smaller operator. They'll be able to help you rapidly. And though that doesn't give me any revenue and it doesn't give my company revenue and it doesn't make my boss happy, inevitably what happens is the person I've been speaking to will move companies at some point. And often they'll move to a larger company. And at that point, they remember who it was that gave them the best advice.
That's right.
And that's when.
That's right.
That's
And
when
on
I've
that
now got a
same
trusted relationship and I get the revenue.
Absolutely. On that same point, another thing they talked about, in order for us to get rid of the idea of losing the business, right, is give away your business.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
give it away. Like you don't have to charge for everything. And I remember reading or watching a video about this. Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you know who he is. Gary V. He goes by Gary V. He was talking to this guy who's struggling to grow his business. He has a restaurant. So he's talking about how he's like, well, I have all these kinds of stuff. Like I do 2-for-1 promotions. Like steak is $10 on Wednesdays. Like he'll come up with all these promotions to try to grow the business. And Gary says, well, just give it away for free. It's like, but how am I going to grow the business if I give it away for free? And he says, well, because people don't get used to free. You can do something for free for somebody. No one gets used to free. Next time when you charge them, they'll pay for it if they like it. Like if you really think your restaurant is good, come here, eat free. If you like my steak, next time chicken is on me. Free chicken, let's go. They might do it second time for free, but if they do that, there's like a 70-something% chance they'll keep coming back and pay full price for it. So that's another thing that I have, is that I don't discount anything. If you don't have the budget to do something and you really need it, I'll do it for free. And then when you get the budget, we'll do whatever other work needs to be done. But what do you guys?
This 10 seconds.
What do you guys think about the idea of giving away the business? What do you guys think about the idea of giving away the business? Or can you give me some examples where in the past you just did it? Like you said, there's a lot of paperwork. You know, I'm just gonna help you. Like I know I'm not gonna get paid for it.
Put them over to someone that can help them.
Yeah.
And give them a good relationship in the long term.
My example is exactly the same, slightly different.
Yeah.
When you give them advice of alternative and you open their eyes to an alternative solution that doesn't involve you. So effectively, yes, you did give away your business, right? An opportunity.
Right.
In your restaurant and says, look, we open at 7. If you're hungry at 6, look, there is a guy around the corner who can feed you, right? So go eat there. But if it's 7, come back. So they will remember the kind words, and if this guy goes out of business, they will come to. So it's kind of
it always works out in the end. I feel like with a lot of this stuff.
It's like the what is it, Miracle on 42nd Street, right, with Santa says, "I'll go to the other store because they've got the toy over there and it's at a better price or whatever." And suddenly
exactly
all this goodwill's been generated.
It's exactly
and suddenly
like that.
the store gets all the business, right?
Cool. So
like
here's another one to get over that fear of losing businesses. They call it tell the kind truth. And what they mean by that is you need to confront the client with a difficult message, even if the client might not like hearing it.
Absolutely.
So this is happening to me right now a lot with customers that I've had that are successful, that love their solution, and now I'm going back to them and saying like, guys, it's time we do this whole migration to the UCI, to the Unified Client Interface, right? We need to do it. And they are so upset because but we paid for it, we're using it, like everything works. Why do I need to now put in budget to do this conversion? Like, why is Microsoft doing this? So like, you have to be able to have that conversation with a client and not be fearful that they might be like, oh, you know, F Rami, like let's just go and work with somebody else. Like, we don't like that message. Like, you need to be able to tell the kind truth. What do you think? Can you give me some examples of maybe in the past when you've had to do it?
Yeah, I mean, quite often, you know, when new technology comes in and you have to advise them, but there's usually resistance.
Yeah.
And the resistance is because of budget. And what I typically do, and I say, well, you know, this is the current situation, and this is what you have to do. And then I'll get some resistance, and I'm like, well, okay, if you guys, you know, don't want to do it, that's fine. You know, we can do it later, but we're going to have the same conversation in a few months. And then when that time comes, we're going to have less time to be able to do it, especially when something is getting deprecated, for example.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
Or there's an upgrade and the due date is on that date. So, you know, you've got like 6 months to do your upgrade, but then comes that date, everything is going to change.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, you have to do it. And they're like, well, we've got no budget. Well, I'm like, well, we can have the conversation now, or we can have it in 6 months when you have to do it anyway. And then when the time comes, I'm like, well, all right, so now we're having the second conversation. As I said 6 months ago, this is what we agreed. Now it's going to cost you that much. So it's not really, you know, in your face, I told you so, but it's more around, well, I did my duties, if you want, to make sure that you are informed, and I've got it on record that, you know, this is the decision that we've made, and it was up to you with a strong recommendation to do it up front. But if you don't want to do it, there's still an option, and those are the consequences. And that way I've got my bases covered, basically.
Yep. Any other examples where you had to tell the kind truth, even though maybe you could have lost the business, or maybe you lost the business? I don't know.
So the one piece of advice I always give the junior consultants is it's your job as a consultant to tell people what they need, not what they want. Right? So the client will say, I want this, I want that one. Yeah, no. What you need is actually this thing. It's not quite the same thing, right? An example was I started a university project a while ago, and IT were involved. And IT came from an Oracle background, and it comes from a Dynamics background. And they had this idea of you have two entities and you have an interaction entity, effectively. So a contact interacts with an account, and then you have a table of the interactions and interaction types. And we want to abstract Dynamics completely and just have this model, right? So they wanted to throw away any kind of structures that are in Dynamics. And it made perfect sense to them because they came from this Oracle background.
Yeah, and you were like, no.
And I had to say, no, I understand you've got lots of papers saying this is best practice for databases. Dynamics isn't just a database. It comes with benefits and it comes with functionality which preclude you from being able to do that. So there was a kind truth there which eventually we won, thankfully, because we showed the interface, we showed how it looks in the broader picture. It's not just a database.
Right.
But yeah, we had to have that hard conversation on multiple times to get them across the line. They'd have set themselves up for failure, and they wouldn't have received any benefits of the business application system if they'd have done it.
People go to solutioning straight away.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to take a step back from and then look at the bigger picture and consult and give them the best option. So, coming from Wellington, New Zealand, a lot of my customers are in the public sector, and most of them do case management. So it's typically what we would call a request to fulfillment. So there's a request that comes in, you do something with it, and you fulfill it. So 80% of our customers have, used 20% of the functionality that we built that is really easy, really straightforward. Mm-hmm. And then that final 20% is the flavor on top that is added to the request to fulfillment sort of scenario, if you want. So we always go back to the basics. Keep it simple. This is your budget. Let's start with something simple that works for you. This is 80% of what you want. Yeah. Let's do it. And then phase 2, phase 3, as they start using it and realize the benefit, we'll add the complicated things that they originally had in their solutioning, if it makes sense to add them.
Here's another one that I want you guys to think about. And I want you to think about like an example that happened to you. And I'll start with mine, that way it gives you time to think about this one. But and this is the last thing that they're talking about. In order for us to get over the fear of losing the business, they call it enter the danger. So entering the danger means don't shy away from uncomfortable situations. Step right into the middle of them, right? Just step in. Let's figure this out. Have the courage to fearlessly deal with an issue that everyone else is afraid to address. Right. So this happened to me. It happened to me in projects before where, let's say, one department is making some requests that I know will not really jive with the rest of the company, the rest of the organization. But the person maybe making their request has some pull. Maybe it's like a VP of sales or something like that. Maybe they come from a business unit that is generating like 30 or 40% of the revenue of the company. So because of that, it's like they have pull, but the rest of the company, which is 70% or whatever of it, would actually not benefit from working through their sales process that way or whatever it is. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. It's sort of like, okay, look, that division is important and they're making a lot of money for the company, but the way they sell and what they sell is completely different from you guys. So what gives? Like, let's sit down and figure this out. Do we need two separate entities? Can we figure out a way to do it together? Like, I just stepped right into the danger zone and let's talk about it, right? He's asking for things you guys don't need. You need things he doesn't need. Like, let's figure this out. Can you give me some examples in the past and maybe you had to like step in and let's talk about this thing?
Yeah, it takes balls to be able to do something like that. I don't know, this whole conversation is getting uncomfortable. We talked about eggs, we're talking about balls, we're talking about being naked.
What's going
entering the danger zone, what is that all about? But yeah, I mean, sometimes you really need to have the guts to say no, or to say that's not how we're going to do it, or let's not go there. And this will establish your role as a leader in the group that you're working with, to be able to push back and say that's not the way we're going to do it. I remember we were working on same customer, two large instances of Dynamics, and we were going through the options of, do we actually have one instance or do we keep them separate? And I remember the project director came in and he said, I don't give a about the others, because if we're going to start introducing dependencies with them, then we're going to have delays and
so awkward.
We're upgrading and we're going to do that. And he said it to their face. I don't care about you. We're not gonna do it that way. And that was.
So what do you do in that case? So you like stay back and be like, okay, I don't know, this is not my business.
Right.
Like,
you get the bucket of nuts and kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Popcorn.
Watch.
No, but like we have to like be able to like step in. Let's talk this out, because this could be an issue, right, for the whole company. Like later on, as I'm doing the implementation, this could become a real issue.
I've got kind of slightly reverse sample. Now, this customer, we've been doing CRM with them since 2011.
Yeah.
And they're currently online and what's not, and they use CRM to drive internal processes, so they build a bunch of workflows and views and kind of. they use CRM for that, and on the side to that, they build kind of an application which is kind of .NET application, which deals with intricacies of the business they're dealing with. And it also provides portals for their customers to come in. But then business kind of grew and they started doing white labeling. So they kind of took this application and moved it away and deployed it, and they couldn't afford for white label like all the CRM licenses. So they deployed a white label, cut off the functionality, so we can't have all these workflows and stuff like this. So now, over the years, this application grew as well. So now they're looking at this white labeled one and say, why can't we use this ourselves and get Dynamics out of the picture completely, because all we seem to be doing is every 2 to 3 years upgrading things, right? We're using basic functionality. And I had to basically step back and, took a long look at it and said, you know what? As pains at me as Dynamics
might be losing the business, yeah.
No, I'm not losing the entire business. We're still doing this app for them,
right?
But as pains it to me to say, look, Dynamics is just not a good fit in your model.
It is what it is, yeah.
It is what it is. And let's talk about it. Let's see where you, maybe we can think coming back with the, Power Apps for your users and building it perhaps on top of the SQL, because it uses SQL, the app uses SQL, but maybe we should consider retaining some of that in Dynamics. But it's a difficult decision to make. So effectively I'm saying, I'm Dynamics consultant, and I have to say, and I'm an alcoholic, and you guys should stop using Dynamics because it's no benefit to you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, if you've got a hammer, not every problem is a nail, right? So you need the right tool for the right problem.
That's true. All right, guys. Well, that was fear number 1. Again, there's 2 more to go on our quest to establishing a good relationship with a customer. But we're gonna tackle fear number 2 on another video. So for now, thank you so much for discussing fear number 1.
Cheers.
And we'll see you on the next one.